Long ago, in a small Hmong village tucked between green mountains and misty rice fields, my father and uncle were still young boys. Life was simple, but happiness surrounded them. Their days were filled with the laughter of children, the warmth of family, and the peace of their close-knit community. Their grandparents were the anchors of their young lives, guiding them through the complexities of the world, teaching them the ways of their ancestors and showering them with unconditional love. They lived in a small wooden house, its walls adorned with hand-woven tapestries and the air filled with the aroma of wood smoke and herbs. It was a sanctuary of warmth and comfort where stories were shared, meals were eaten together, and life's challenges were faced with the support of family. However, like the changing seasons, life took an unexpected turn. First, their grandfather passed away, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. And not long after, their grandmother, unable to bear the separation, also closed her eyes for the last time. The joyous laughter within the home was replaced by sobs. The comforting silence of their presence was replaced by the deafening emptiness of their absence. The once vibrant colors of life seemed to fade into a dull gray. If you like this kind of story, please like and subscribe. Those who loved them were gone, and their grandparents, who had been their protectors and guides, became just memories. The two boys were left alone in the world, orphaned and without anyone to care for them. In the weeks that followed, their small home turned into a battle against hunger and despair. The rice fields, once a place of joy, now mocked them with their bounty. The fish in the nearby river seemed to mock them with their carefree swimming. Each day was a struggle. Some mornings their stomachs ached from hunger and their small hands trembled as they worked in the fields or collected firewood. The village, once a source of warmth and belonging, now seemed vast and empty without their grandparents' loving presence. They missed the sound of their voices, the feel of their strong hands, and the wisdom they shared. They missed the way their eyes crinkled when they smiled and the stories they told of a world beyond their small village. Life was no longer a kaleidoscope of colors. It was a somber melody of loneliness and longing. Yet even in death, my grandparents did not abandon their grandchildren. One cold night, after a particularly difficult day when the boys had nothing to eat, my father whispered, "Grandmother, grandfather, if you can, please bring us something to eat." He whispered because he wasn't sure if such a prayer could reach heaven, but somewhere deep inside him, he believed. Maybe it was the love of a grandson, maybe it was the echo of hope, or perhaps it was the spirit of their ancestors urging them forward. Whatever it was, his whisper carried on the night wind, reaching the ears of those who had passed on. The next morning, to their astonishment, a whole leg of wild pig meat hung on the wall of their small home. The meat was fresh, as though it had been delivered just hours before. The boys stared at each other, unsure what to do or who could have left it. "Who brought this here?" my uncle asked, his voice trembling. But there was no answer. No one in the village had come near their home. They were utterly alone. And yet somehow a wild pig, a meal fit for a king, had appeared. At first they hesitated, fear wrestling with their need. Who could have done this? Was it a prank or something more sinister? But desperation edged out their apprehension and they ate. It was the most delicious, the most comforting meal they had ever tasted. It was as though the love of their grandparents had infused it with magic. In that moment, the coldness of fear receded, replaced by the warmth of remembrance and the quiet hum of hope. From then on, whenever my father and uncle awoke hungry or asked for food, the next morning there would always be fresh meat hanging in their home. Sometimes it was a plump chicken, sometimes a fat duck, and once even a large bag of fish. These gifts were not just sustenance, they were messages of love and reassurance from their grandparents. As the days turned into weeks, the boys began to understand that even in death, the bond of family remained unbroken. Their grandparents, in their own unique way, were still with them, guiding them, protecting them, and ensuring they did not go hungry. They may have passed on, but their love had not. It flowed like an underground spring, nourishing their hearts and reminding them that they were not alone. One day, while working in the rice paddies, my father felt a presence beside him. He turned, half expecting to see a fellow villager, but there was no one there. Yet he could have sworn he saw the faint outline of a man and woman, walking in the field, their steps light and their backs stooped with age, just as his grandparents had walked. As he watched, mesmerized, they seemed to merge with the rows of swaying rice plants. When he turned again, they were gone. He looked around, startled, but there was no sign of them anywhere. Still, he knew, deep down, that it was his grandparents walking beside him, their love bridging the divide between the seen and the unseen. There were times when they heard whispers, gentle voices calling their names as they walked into the forest to gather firewood. Sometimes the footsteps were in front of them, sometimes behind. But whether they heard a voice or saw a shadow, they knew deep down that it was their grandparents walking beside them, invisible guardians who had not truly left. They were there in the rustle of the leaves, the murmur of the stream, and the warmth of the sun on their skin. They were there in the strength that pulled them up when their hands were too weak to hold a basket, in the sudden clarity of thought when a problem seemed too big, and in the courage that blossomed in their chests when fear threatened to overwhelm them. Even as the seasons changed, their grandparents' love never faded. Spring turned to summer, the rice paddies overflowed, and the mountains turned green. Then summer yielded to autumn, the fruits ripened, and the leaves began their slow dance of descent. Winter arrived with its biting winds and the promise of new beginnings. But through it all, the love of their grandparents remained a constant, a steadfast presence in the changing panorama of life. As the years passed, the boys grew into strong young men, not because of anyone in the living world, but because of the enduring care of those who had passed on. They learned that true love does not end with the final breath, but echoes in the rustling leaves, whispers on the wind, and lingers in the hearts of those left behind. Their grandparents, though no longer visible, were still very much a part of their lives. They say that when you lose someone you love, they don't really leave you. They become a part of your story, a chapter in your heart. That's what happened to my father and uncle. Their grandparents, though physically absent, remained an integral part of their story, shaping their journey through life with love, hope, and unwavering support. My father and uncle never forgot these gifts, both tangible and invisible. They learned that love does not die with the body, that it lives on in spirit, in the quiet footsteps behind you, in the unexpected gifts left on the wall, and in the unseen hands that guide and protect you when the world feels dark. Even today, my family tells this story, not only to remember the kindness of those who came before, but to honor the invisible presence of ancestors, the silent guardians whose love can cross the boundaries between life and death. For as long as we remember them, they are with us. For as long as we carry their love in our hearts, they walk beside us on our life's journey. This is a true story that was written to me by a user. If you like this story, please leave a comment below. And if you want to read more stories like this, click here. Thanks for watching.